stream the meeting. And from experience, it usually starts before you think it started, but this is done, redirecting to YouTube. Okay, here we go. So, you guys, we had a problem starting, but here we are again. They're not going to stop this message coming out, so I appreciate your patience, and sorry we're a little bit late, but I'm your host, Anahazi, here at Christos Avatar TV, and I'm just going to jump right into it and have our guest, Julia, go ahead and introduce yourself again. Thank you, Star Sister.
Yeah, no worries. My name's Julia Kamman. I'm a passionate researcher. I'm a passionate researcher and I'm about like, hey, how do we thrive? Like what's the root of truth and how can we combat some of these, agendas, and I'm about raising consciousness essentially. And I love talking about Tartaria because for me it connects like a lot of dots. And, in our blood is 1 gram of DNA can hold up to 455 exabytes of data. So we have these memories and we have these things, and we're such powerful beings. So any information that can help us step into our power and thrive, like I'm all about it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of us just waking, on a spiritual journey. While we get mocked, people don't understand or think we're schizophrenic, or, that you've probably heard a lot of terrible things. People just don't get the woke thing or being woke, or it's part of our DNA, and it's a process. And a lot of us, it's like, I'm sure you've expressed that it's like a strong desire to bring this message of truth and an awakening out to the public. Haven't you felt that in your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's things sound wise when people speak truth, like it vibrates differently and awakens things inside of our DNA. Like our DNA emits biophotons, our eyes emit biophotons. So when we hear truth, there's a reason why, it resonates so deeply. Like, I mean, it's incredibly advanced. So,
Yeah. And I want to ask you, what can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey, and how this you got started into topics like Tartaria and some of these other unique topics we're going to talk about tonight?
yeah, in 2014, I came across well, first off, in 2013, I was instructed to I was aggressively guided to stare at specific stars and meditate on them. And when I did that, I was having visions and I would write them down, which is, it sounds easy to do. Like, oh, go stare at a star and write things down. I'm pretty sure my partner at the time was like, oh my God, this girl's like losing her mind. Like she's outside. What is she doing this whole time? Like it looks crazy, right?
Mhm.
But there was, data, and it's to have to be in that state, that altered state, and be writing. It's it took some learning to do. And so I received I wanted to know what some of these things were. So it kind of changed the course of my life. Not kind of, it definitely did. It got me because some of the symbols that I was writing down were alchemical symbols that stopped being used in the 15th century. Some of them were ancient languages, some that have never been decoded.
You think that's
And
your
so
past life? Kind of like a
I,
past life connections?
yeah, I don't know. And so I was so just zeroed in and focused on I need to figure this out, just super driven. But I think it kind of caused me to go on a dark spiral because I had so much learning to do and unlearning to do. I needed to develop. And so I started directing my consciousness and training, and focusing. And what I realized was, the more I practiced and the more I cleansed, the more profound the clarity was. And so I had some, so many epiphanies and so many amazing experiences doing that. So I'm very passionate about preaching that and the results you get. And so, yeah, I came across, so flash forward to 2014, I came across, because I'm receiving these symbols and I'm trying to decode them. And it got me looking in ancient tablets and writings, the writings. And basically I came across the Tartarian tablet that was found in Romania. It's very interesting because it was found 19 miles. It was found in Alba, like Alba Julia, which it's like 19 miles from where Starfort was. And this tablet, some say it's like Vincan. Nobody's ever been able to decode it, but that's the first I heard of Tartaria. And then slowly, like, and then coming across the fireplaces in the buildings, like these old buildings of like, wait, were they operate? Was this some kind of free energy, that they then sealed up these fireplaces? Like it was, to me, it was very suspicious and very telling. Like that's not a fireplace. Like what's going on here? So yeah, that was, and then it just, I dove deeper and deeper. And then, so I came up with my own protocol for remote viewing. And, then I was approached by Vice to do a show on Inner Earth. I'm very passionate about Inner Earth. And yeah, I had a profound experience doing that. But the guy,
not the same as Hollow Earth, right?
well, yeah, Hollow Earth. They were really upset. They were like, I would call it Inner Earth,
Of
and they
course.
were like, no, like they were very like, excuse me, it's hollow. And then they had to keep correcting me because I was like Inner Earth, and they were like,
Maybe
Julia,
that was their
it's hollow.
agenda. That's their ideas they want to push, right? And you want to come with truth and light, but they don't want to hear it, right?
Right.
But that's Vice. Vice is a mainstream type of, so I guess into spirituality, but not like an actual person who's dedicated their life to. I mean, I think it's awesome how you explained you were staring at star systems, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that got you this literal connection. And that's real. It's like anything, that's the way the consciousness works. You can practice meditating with your eyes open on an object to get, isn't that how psychometry works,
Mm-hmm. Conjugation. Yeah, phosphine conjugation. And like I it makes you also look too at some of these sites. You see Göbekli Tepe, you see Karahan Tepe. Like, did they put water in these sites to stare into the water, reflecting specific stars of doing that? I don't know. But whether or not, it's just interesting because I think it was something I kept secret. It was like a secret thing that I did and like was like, I can't tell anyone, it sounds crazy. Like, I'm going to go stare at this star and retrieve data. Like it sounds so crazy. And but yeah, no, I had profound results with it. But I came across something saying that Tesla and somebody else, was it Einstein, that said they retrieved that they were getting data from a specific star that was in the same constellation of the star I was um aggressively guided towards. So I found that where I was like, oh, like it is just kind of healing for my heart to hear that.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of those experiences, I mean, we can't tell, like, for example, our Christian family or someone who's going to demonize us on our sacred experiences. So we find like-minded people who are experiencing some similar paranormal, supernatural experiences, right? I mean, that's what we did at the alien event, a group of people who find themselves on a similar journey and quest for the truth, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, um we're taught a lot of things about that, astrology is demonic and herbs and stuff is being like a witch. It seems like a lot of the things that can help you were demonized. All the women were taken out of the Bible. And we have that sacred secretion that comes up every month, the chrism
Mhm.
that goes up our 33 vertebrae. And goes up to the hypothalamus, and then our pineal produces the sacred secretion. Like that process happens every month
Well,
when the huh?
they demonize the women in churches. You're not even allowed to speak in the church to teach. So that's a whole program in itself that we talk about here on Christos Avatar. But yeah,
and
that's interesting.
and that's what I mentioned of like the most sacred divine technology. I think that's most impressive resides in between a woman's hips. Like it's a soul portal in the uterus. And so to guard, like, so I feel like you can get the most closest to God is like women, so to demonize something that's capable of doing that and has a soul portal is like mind blowing to me that it would even be effective. Like everybody comes from their mother, like to not regard and have that respect for their authority is like, I can't believe they pulled it off.
Yeah, it's a patriarchal world. They got to put down the divine feminine. Now there's a inversion, there's a distortion. And so it's all part of their black magic systems. It's all part of their, programs and agendas to undermine, humanity by attacking the female, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's what it's like. The bridge between man and woman has been broken and like needs to be rebridged. Definitely.
I want to ask you, a lot of people, or some people may not be familiar with Tartaria. So could you kind of like
Oh,
describe it in the most basic sense and explain if it's a global civilization, a region, or something else?
well, it existed on maps and it was the largest empire maps. And there's a map from like 1652 that shows Tartary and North America under the same empire. But there's debate on that of whether or not, and then, the land up to Alaska, there's reports of that land bridge that it was once connected so that Tartaria and America was indeed, one. And that's why I love on my slides, it shows that map showing that they were connected. And so it was around 1812, Grand Tartary is replaced by the Russian Empire. And then, but they're still independent in Chinese Tartary. So it's sometimes East and West Tartary. So by 1860, the Chinese Tartary is Chinese Empire, and the remaining Russian Tartary disappears around 1880. So it seems to be that it's hiding a major world power. Like, but it had its own flag. There's so many people that will say Tartaria is a psyop. Like it had its own flag. It actually had two flags. It had one, and it had its own government, and it had a ton of land. And on one of the flags was a griffin, and on one of the flags was an owl. So, yeah. And so, what's also really profound is that the CIA had a document like mentioning this, and it said, in other words, Tartar history was to be rewritten. Let us be frank, was to be falsified. So,
And anybody can look that up. It's out there, that document.
yeah, that's
And
huge.
I want to say these maps were made by European cartographers, and so you'll find Tartaria labeled like across vast parts of Eurasia, Europe and Asia, like one big thing. But you're saying it's even into America, but it covers areas of Siberia, Mongolia, Central Asia, and parts of China. So I think that's what you meant by independent Tartaria, Chinese Tartaria, Greater Tartaria. But there's something
Well,
very
on some of the
peculiar.
maps, like it's referring to on some of the maps over the years how it changes. It's a way to describe like, oh, all of a sudden it was this, and then that area was then called that. Like the way it progressed of it was the largest empire maps, and then this area becomes this at this around this time because there's so much we don't know and can refer to of like how did this happen? What happened? This has been kept from us and want to deem that it's like fake and not real. And there's even an encyclopedia from 1771 that talks about um like Tartaria, and like basically that it was a great country. It says from the Urals to Alaska, from New Earth to Tibet, Tartaria was a great country in northern Asia, bounded by Siberia in the north and called Great Tartaria in the west. And it goes on, but the fact that that was written in 1771 is
Yeah.
like profound.
And most people think it's between the 1600s to the 1800s, but isn't it possible it could be much more ancient? Like we talk about Atlantis and how they had the super amazing tech, they had connections to extraterrestrials. There was no frequency fence around the planet at that time. So that was like, according to these Guardian teachings, we talk about Atlantis being, tens of thousands of years ago. And so maybe it's much bigger than Tartaria narrative is. Maybe it's including even much more ancient. What do you
I,
think?
yeah, like I feel that in my bones. And,
Yeah.
but, I see how resistant we are and people are, especially looking at the architecture of, was there a global unified civilization? I
Hmm.
mean, all over the world. And it's so profound when you see it and you can't
Yeah.
unsee it. Of look at all this architecture. I mean, is that so why we shoot that down? And then having countries like, we have this tribal blood that's inside of us. And the tribes, I feel like knowing who and what you are, but instead there's people that are like, no, I'm Romanian. It's like, well, hold on here. How long has Romania been Romania? Since 1859? Like
Mhm.
you're identifying with a country that hasn't been called that country for not
Mhm.
very long.
Yeah.
So of that division of divide and borders and all of that stuff. I mean, it's it's pretty amazing. So yeah, the fact that are these is this the remnants of an Atlantis type civilization? Is this what was referred to? Um, were they? You hear about like mating, fallen angels mating with women. Is this
Enoch,
the
yeah.
remnants of that? Like, did they build Tartaria like for their offspring? Like that why everything was big? But then also the thought of everything seemed to be larger. These trees were enormous. And, like the vapor canopy or um, the vapor canopy theory that, and also like, was everything just larger then? It wasn't like there was just giants. It was just everything was larger because we were silica based, not carbon based. And the atmosphere was different. So I like to theosophize and theorize of like what could it have been, because we don't
Yeah.
know for sure. And there's a lot of amazing researchers out there, but what will happen is they'll blanket everything under Tartaria.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it was Tartarian. Like we end
Yeah.
up there's so much confusion. There's so much we don't know. We've been programmed with such junk. We'll just you know throw it all under Tartaria.
Well, that's what I mean. It's definitely bigger and much more ancient. And so, and what you're talking about leads into the giant topic we're going to talk about tonight. But it has to do with the DNA. There's different Earth seed races and star seed races on Earth. If you have three-strander compared to someone with five strands, that is possible to have giants. It comes down to starseed DNA mixing. You could say we're like hybrids. We're not the body, we're the soul essence that came into the body. And so you've got your mother's DNA, your father's DNA, plus this incoming soul that creates a hybrid. And I talk about that here, but yeah, we definitely have giants. I heard you talk about giant books, giant doors, and like you said, everything seemed bigger, more, enormous, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, was it just was everything bigger at one point, or did it, dissipate and those are the remnants of something else, or is it the fallen angels and the products of that? But yeah, like, and the Great Wall of China, that's a biggie for a lot of people because of like, wait a second, like the openings on the wall are on the north side facing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of wonders like that. We have to kind of like maybe reinterpret things from a different point of view, the more that we learn about these anomalies on our planet. And speaking of anomalies, I want to ask you, what is the significance of like the mud flood theory? How is it in rewriting human history, and how we've been finding out about all these sites that have been buried, right? Or been built
Yeah.
on top of.
So I theorized that there was a massive flooding, but then it became regionally, like perhaps because Star Forts governs a lot of water, so do pyramids. And so if something can intercept, it's almost like there was a fall in consciousness. Or like, I don't know, something came in and gained control. Like a darker force gained control or something. Like there was a shift. Maybe from a plasma apocalypse, I don't know. But it seemed to be that they know when to go beneath the earth, before those things. So did they gain control of something like, Starford or a geyser or dams or something to control the amount of waters and like to be able to ignite a large, flooding in different areas? Like I don't know why I feel like it could have happened regionally, but I don't know. I just feel like there could have been a big flood and then regional floods.
Yeah. Yeah, in these teachings, they talk about how it wasn't one flood, but actually a couple of floods, and it was actually intentional, done by the fallen angelic, malevolent ETs, and that's another factor that maybe not many Tartarian narratives talk about, that there is, when you talk about Tartaria, they're not all good and benevolent.
Right.
Why assume
Right.
that? If something's actually covering up Tartaria as well. So I believe there was both warring going on, like you said, or some type of takeover or fighting going on amongst each other. I mean, so we call those negative ETs or fallen angels, whatever you want to call them.
Right. But I think so badly we want this like utopian fairy
Yeah,
tale that like we were I love it. I want to believe that. Like
of
we were a
course.
global unified civilization that we just floating on higher consciousness and we loved each other,
Yeah.
like that it was just nothing but love, nothing but love. But maybe that's not really how it was.
Yeah, I think we're not like dismissing the Tartarian narrative. We're just bringing more clarity and more perspective from others, like more than one source of information about it, And like we mentioned, Atlantis has got to be part of it, and Lemuria part of it. There once was a giant continent, then it became part islands. There was cataclysms. We know that, right? And we went to inner Earth for a reason. Like you said, some of us knew and some didn't. Some went off planet. So we have a rich, rich history, and it's a forbidden history now. And I think that's what people like you, we come together in these talks and explore those ideas. So
Yeah, absolutely. We're here to remember. We're here to remember. We all have different pieces of the puzzle and we just come together and figure it out.
why do you think the knowledge of Tartaria was hidden, and by who?
Well, just think if it was, their architecture was a lot of it free energy. Not only that, but it seemed to be that they had oscillation of the cell of to harmonize your cells so you wouldn't be sick. So if you knew the notes to play in what order and frequency to combat things, then mold, fungus, like parasites, illness can't thrive. So if you want to control a population, you would need them sick and controllable. Like if they're living a long time and they have information. I mean, look how Royal Raymond Rife was treated. He cured cancer. Like, and
Yeah.
he did it. He said every disease lives in a frequency and dies in a frequency. It's about knowing what you have to what frequency to treat it with. So these cathedrals, these places of worship, were they places to go to harmonize the cells in your body? And like it's very fascinating in these organs of the note. Like you can't. People have worked on the organs and they could kind of fix them, but they can't create the organs that were made
Are
centuries ago.
you're talking about the musical instrument
Right.
organs?
Yeah, like in cathedrals, I find it very significant that beneath most of these cathedrals is where water intersects. So are they programming the water on top of like harmonizing your cells? You know,
Sounds
and I,
like sounds like cymatics.
right.
And that's
Yeah.
what star forts are, right? They're these interesting geometries that, you see it kind of similar from a cymatic, image. So they were
Right.
using sound for
Right.
technology.
Sound, like sound healing and frequency is extremely important. Like our body, like for voltage, like we're supposed to eat for voltage, like our bodies are electric. And oh, I love the information about what Dr. Jerry Pollack says. He says, like, it's not just like when we breathe, it's not just the oxygen in our bodies that we're breathing in, that it's the electrons from oxygen that are like the real stars of the show. It's like your red blood cells are like these little electric shuttles delivering these electrons all over like our body, because the electrons power the chemical reactions our bodies need to survive. So they're like fuels to our cells. So basically, his theory is suggesting that it's the electricity from electrons that keeps us alive and thriving. So breathing is not just about taking in oxygen, but it's about recharging the body's electrical system. And I think that there's a lot of information that we don't have about that. Like our bones are piezoelectric, and that's why it's important to like work out and to like recharge, actually like having that piezoelectricity happen with your muscles and like lifting weights. Like it actually gives you energy, where we're kind of taught it exhausts you. But yeah. So
So
the sound.
so some of this is tied into free energy, and in these buildings, churches, stuff, they're like resonance buildings. Like it's a tool, right?
Right. Like, and if we knew, I mean, atmospheric energy, if we knew how to harness that power, I mean, look what happened to Tesla. I mean, was that supported? No. Like, was it,
Well,
he was shunned for it.
that does the people in power don't want free energy. They want to hide that tech. This is why they're hiding Tartaria. If people find out we used to be living off of free energy, what happened to it? That's all right.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's basically, you said it right there, is why have the people know about an advanced civilization that knew how to have their health thriving, knew how to live off of atmospheric energy and produce amazing architecture and program their water? That's another thing that's really significant. I mean, these ancient aqueducts and what they knew about water, like I always say, water is the mediator between physicality and the 0 point energy of the quantum field. The just We could do a show on water in the future about like the amazing things that's so profound, and they knew how important that was. And speak of the star forts, that you look at the star forts and you're like, wow, it makes you think of Dr. Emoto's work of when
Mm,
you talk to the water and you say really negative things, the
yeah.
the crystal formation, like what it would look like under a microscope when you freeze it. But when you spoke loving things or there was positive frequencies, it made these divine crystalline structures. And when you look at that on a microscope and then you look at the star forts and you're like, oh my God, it looks
Yeah.
like a beautiful crystalline, water crystalline structure that was charged with positive energy and
Yeah.
like great frequencies.
Well, and besides the organs, there was giant bells, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The bells. And a lot of them were destroyed. And so it's very interesting of like, you see a lot of these star cities, in the center of them would be a bell tower. And the way like you see it and these streets, the way it lines up, it was like they knew how it oscillates out, like to where those sounds in certain orders would like almost feed, heal, whatever, everyone in that radius.
Mhm. Yeah, that's amazing. Um, I was going to ask you, what about some of the giants that are mentioned in some of your videos? Is that part of some of these ancient cultures, you think, that kind of like remnants of, I'm not saying all Tartarians were giants, but certainly there must be, this is transitioning into our giant topic. Do you think that's kind of like what some of these 10 feet, 15 feet skeletons are?
You hear a
Or,
lot. It's easy to find information about like these cannibalistic um giants, right? Like I that's what I came across. I feel like it's really easy to find that, or stories about certain tribes that had to fight like cannibalistic giants. But I like the info of in Catalina, in and around Catalina, like there's a ton of UFO activity and a lot of USOs, like UFOs that come up and out of the water.
mm,
And there was so many giants that were found on that island. And Ralph Glidden uncovered a lot of them. And then, they put them in museums. I think Wrigley from like, they bought Catalina. And, but there's people that believe there's a portal there and that these giants were blue eyed, blonde hair, and that they guarded this portal. But I find that very interesting because it's really easy to find horrible information. Like they're all cannibals. And,
yeah.
as you know, with everything, like it's not always like that.
Yeah, I mean, even in some of the movies like Jack and the Beanstalk and showing these giants as eating you, they're like dark and twisted and they hate humans or whatever. But do you think they're all going to be like that? Or do you think there's different races of these beings?
I feel like there's got to be different races.
Hmm.
I
Not
feel
just
like,
the
huh?
not just the red-haired giants.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, because they found giant bones, elongated skulls, but it's being covered up by institutions like, the Smithsonian
Yeah. Why won't they
or
admit it? You
right.
know, why
It's
won't they
cool.
admit it?
It's the same with the church and the government authorities. We find burial mounds. We found these in caves, and even some of the mud flood is excavations they found, like in Tennessee, Ohio, Missouri. They found some of these bones. So, like you said, they're denying it, just like they'll deny UFOs. They're going to deny giants.
Well, what if some of them were like demigods? Like some of them could have been cannibalistic, like fallen angel of like, mate, the product of fallen angels mating with the women. But what if some of them were like demigods? You hear about Gilgamesh. And so that possibility of like, I'm open to it.
Well, the Nephilim are one of the best examples of the fallen angelic hybrids who were giants, and they slaughtered the humans during that time. It's this breeding between the Anunnaki, Jehovians, we call them draconian ETs. Some have been described as like 12 feet, even 36 feet tall. I mean, they're aggressive, territorial. I heard they stink really bad, right? But even historically, there's Anakim, there's Gibberim or Raphaim. I mean, they're mentioned in the Bible, giants, and other sources like the Book of Enoch you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
And certainly they're talked about in SSP, and even Native Americans talk about giants. So, what is some of the findings that did you want to share some of those screenshots of those things that you found?
Um, sure. Okay.
Of course, there's going to be all kinds of conspiracy theories that people will say those bones aren't real, or it's just too difficult for them to believe that there's such big beings, or
Oh, I hit a request to share.
yeah, there we
Okay.
go.
Let's go to
And you could show the star forts eventually
Oh,
too,
okay.
because I thought that was so cool, man. It blows your mind.
We could start. Yeah, I think I'm going to come across. So, yeah, these are the organs.
Wow.
I mean, they're gorgeous. Look at this one.
Yeah, look at the art. Look at the craftsmanship. Do you think we can do that nowadays, right? And
And
and listen to them. They're powerful. If you hear recordings of people playing them, right? They're so profoundly strong.
and then looking at the windows, the cathedral windows,
Oh
like
yeah,
don't they look like somatic sound frequencies?
exactly.
And, Pythagoras talks a lot about the God frequency. And so some of these, you see these places that are carved like beneath Malta, like they're carved and the granite is cut in a particular way to where when you measure that room, each room has a designated frequency. So it's almost like, you'd go down there and pray, like that you get closer to God. And the profound insights I did from cleansing and, on surface earth, I can only imagine of like being in a room that's like at that frequency, how profound it would be.
Yeah.
So let's see here. Okay, this was the Tartarian tablet that I brought up earlier.
Mm.
That's what it looks like. So if anybody wants to decode this, make sure to message me. I'd love to hear. And this is where it was found in Alba Giulia in Romania. You see how it's right like 19 miles from this star fort.
Mm.
And this talks about how Genghis Khan had blue eyes and red hair. And I heard that he had blonde hair that he would like put some kind of strawberry dye in it to like make it red. But that yeah, this guy's account was that he witnessed him having, blue eyes and red hair.
It was Scythian.
Yeah, so seeing like where this tribe, see how it was tribal and in this area. So like in the Sarmatians, like so this is Marco Polo, and he said if he
Yeah,
wrote about what he saw, like no one would believe him. He talks about like dragons and like he describes like a reptilian that he saw,
exactly.
and that the gall of them, that the locals knew the powers that when you killed one, like you take some like a gland or something out of them, and that it was gave like humans like amazing profound strength, and that it was like a powerful thing to ingest.
Virile energy. Well, they do the same thing though. They eat humans for the same reasons.
Right, like what if they're more nutritious? So so okay, so this is 1909. These are electrical cars that are plugged in, because that's like what another thing is too, is like my family.
Like the Tesla cars, but 100 years ago plus.
Yeah, my family's like, we're getting so advanced, Julia. I'm like, you guys, I'd get so mad at them because I would be like, dude, we've been in the dark ages. Like we were
Right.
incredibly advanced not too long ago. That's another thing that was profound for me. Like this was a fax machine. Did you know you could fax someone in the 1800s? It was called a pantelegraph, and you could fax someone.
Well, this is one of the things that are being hidden, like in the Stataria, they have these advanced tech that now it's covered up, right?
Right. And then Zeppelins. So some of these towers were they like little gas stations to gas
So
up these Zeppelins with the proper, proper fuel.
yeah, that looks kind of strange just to sit parked like that.
And then I made this meme, but it's a vertical parking garage in the 1920s. It just
Wow.
This is called the mono wheel. This is from 1932. It didn't go that fast, but I thought it was brilliant. And this right here is like this amphibious railroad in England. I mean, I would want to go on a date on that thing. That'd be pretty romantic. Okay, this is a picture of the fireplaces, and that's from the Charles Schwab Gilded Mansion fireplace, which either these people went under and then they came out, what could have happened is they came and conquered like families that were very successful that had acquired wealth, and they could have overtaken their mansions, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like if they were wiped out, and then, or they took the name and acted like they were that family when indeed that family was wiped out. So, um, was it, yeah, atmospheric gathering tech. So just beautiful structures. Look at that. Okay. And then California being an island for a while, look at that massive bird in front of
That's
him
that's
or
crazy.
behind him.
Yeah,
So
things were giants back then, bigger.
yeah, just how it's just very possible diving down of a way to remember how to thrive again, you know, like, and here's the star forts, and we're told that they're bastion bases, that it's for war. Like
Oh,
it's
of
always
course.
inverted, right?
Yeah, they got to invert and demonize it.
Yeah. So, and then here is the giant doors, a picture of the giant doors.
Why would they need such big doors, right?
Yeah, who's walking in those?
Show the book. Like that's crazy. Who needs a giant book?
Where do you print that?
Exactly. What happened to the publisher for that? That's insane, man. That's like,
So, um, what is very powerful to me is the orphan train movement, coming across that information, that all of a sudden there's this influx. So between 1854 and 1929, they relocated 250,000 children. Like, where did they come from? Why the influx? Were these the remnants of Tartaria? Like, it's so sad to me. Um, you know, were they just removed? Were some of them from certain projects and bases down beneath? Because you see a lot of um, increase of all of a sudden there's these incubator babies and it's like adoption. And there's some videos you could watch about like they're calling it like the Cabbage Patch Kids, and this marketing campaign about it. Like, wait, were there some genetically modified humans sprinkled into the population then? Were
well,
all of them or some of them remnants of Tartaria and that? But like we're walking around with amnesia and no one really remembers.
was there something unique about those kids? Did they describe what they were like?
It's like targeting some of them. I mean, it's so much has gone lost where they're like people coming forward, like, "Hey, my great grandpa was." Like, so many people aren't even aware that their relative was. So that would be interesting to really dive in and investigate which ones were, what were their tendencies, like to do a study.
Look at this. The similar buildings in Japan, in Taiwan, in Argentina. Hmm.
Right. Look at this one.
Wow. And a lot of this architecture we couldn't duplicate nowadays in
Look at how yeah,
2025.
look at how we're doing. It showed train stations then,
And now
train
look,
stations now.
yeah, they don't want us inspired. They don't want us reaching for the stars or being empowered.
And
So,
so that's another thing that like I'll talk about is you hear of these, the Hopi talks a lot about the ant people coming up from surface earth, right? And so the sky god of Babylon was called Anu, and the Hopi word for ant is also Anu. And so the Hopi root word was Naki, which means friends. So the Hopi Anunnaki, or friends of ants, may have been the same as the Sumerian Anunnaki. So
well, that was
th-
their Anunnaki god, the Anu, and then Enlil, Enki, Marduk. So yeah, that's the same word being
that
used.
of being like, were they the ones that are, is that similar? So the Hopi discussing that there was ant beings that came from under the earth and before a cataclysm to get to save the people were the Anunnaki. We're taught they came from the sky, but were they down beneath the earth the whole time? So this is the Modo's crystalline water structure. And then,
They look like the Star Forts.
yeah. And then this right here is okay. So a lot of people talk about how are these, or a lot of people don't talk about is how are these structures made. There's people will say like, oh, it's like they 3D printed it, or so I dove down like a total rabbit hole of like how did they make these ancient structures. And so this to me is like a great visual. Oh, is it going to let me play it?
It's playing. Photon lasers. So kind of like what you were saying with, yeah, the detail's amazing.
So yeah, it got me to look into photonic lasers and then even like quantum photonic lasers. And even considering too what we hear about, because I see it like a drone flying around that's able to like have a photonic laser on it. And it makes me think of the crop circles information that there's this thing that flies around that's able to cut the wheat like precisely. So
Yeah.
of that thought of like that similar way that was used to carve possibly.
Hmm.
But yeah, so that's basically like an overview
Hmm.
of like I highly suggest diving into Tartaria. It connects a lot of dots and discovering like your own information of like what do you find. I love finding anything that's written before the 15th century. It seemed that things really took a turn.
Can
And
you
so, huh?
can you close the share?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm just
That's
sitting
right.
here like talking.
That's right.
I'm just sitting here like just getting all deep,
Continue.
staring off into space. But I don't I lost my train of thought.
But I wanted to get into, oh, you were telling people, hey, get into it, research it, look it up. I mean, I think it's blows anybody's mind who's generally looking into our roots and our, we did have a huge civilization that was using free energy, that was using the secrets that were being held back now. I mean, what you call them the deep state, you call it the cabal, the secret, the secret military, the secret governments, the secret space programs. So this is why I'm starting to talk about the secret space programs because we need to talk about, man, there's something else going on that people are just following the mainstream, just following mainstream TV, mainstream people, and mainstream scholastics, but they're not going beyond that.
I know we were talking to David Childress. He was like, you mentioned Tartaria. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not familiar. I'm like, David, we need you on this subject. He is such an amazing researcher. Like, amazing. If we could put a mind like that to uncover there's amazing people. Martin Liedtke is great. Andreas Exertus is great. Campbell from Autodidactic. Ancient Historia is great. Like these people, there's amazing researchers out there that have covered Tartaria, and I absolutely adore them. Like a bunch of us were in a group chat and we would we were all about the information. Like there was no egos. Like we're sharing this information. Like we were supportive of each other. And I've noticed that as the people that kind of vibe and like vibrate on the Tartaria information and, look into it. Like I love all of them. like,
Yeah.
like, yes.
Yeah, a lot of us are doing incarnating as groups. I call it Team Indigo. Give me five Indigo children. But I want to ask you if you could explain like what remote viewing is,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
how it works.
I have to use the restroom, but I'm totally gonna try to wait. But I shouldn't drink all that coffee. But
No,
remote viewing is a traveling clairvoyance. The government actually had they had called Project Stargate, and they studied it and did all these experiments with it.
mm,
And it's something that is profound. Like there's amazing results with it. I think they spent like $20 million or more on it, and it's traveling clairvoyance. So if you have a target location and you put in the longitude and latitude, the remote viewer is blind to it, and they retrieve data that has to do with that. And
mm,
so we all have that. I believe we all have that ability. I believe some are better than others. There are like um, tips and things. I teach people how to remote view, and I have a very strict protocol. And I seek people with like accuracy and almost like a purity to them. I feel like
mm,
that matters completely.
yeah. If you want to go to the restroom, go
Can
ahead.
I? Oh
I'll
my
talk for a
God.
few minutes.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
no
Wait,
problem.
do I
No,
mute my
just
mic? No?
sure. You can
Okay.
if you want. Okay. So yeah, you guys, I want to talk a bit about that. She mentioned the Stargate project, and this is in the 70s, the 90s, this is where remote viewing is, why they may deny psychic abilities or psychic potential in humans. They're using it. They're researching it. They're developing it. And it was like the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency and the CIA, they funded these secret programs. And like she was starting to talk about, they called it Project Stargate, trying to weaponize, these abilities instead of uh, some type of awakening or connection to your higher selves. Of course, they're going to want to weaponize it into a bad thing. But there's been notable figures. Some of you have probably heard of Ingo Swann, Pat Price, Major Ed Dames. Uh, these were amongst some of the most well-known government-employed remote viewers. Well, they claimed various degrees of success, but it is something that they developed over time and got better at it. Um, and there is courses online like Julia teaches, and people can learn the different protocols. Um, and it's kind of like she was mentioning the blank target. You would use a sealed envelope or protocols-based series of steps, including endiograms are called, or sensory impressions, something that you're smelling, or textures or shapes. And so, or any type of emotional impressions. And people would start sketching what they're perceiving. But it's layers of deeper data. So, and I'll let Julia talk more about that. Hopefully she feels better now. Hey,
Oh
Julia.
my gosh, I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. It was starting to affect my answers.
No, don't worry about it. It's now we're all good.
I cut out coffee because, I was so strict for so many years about like, you can't do anything like that. Like, it strains your adrenals. But I started drinking coffee again, and I'm like, God, I really missed it. I like it.
Well, don't let people tell you what you should and should not do. That's not free will. So, but this is used in modern usage, right? Like remote viewing is taught in workshops, online courses, spiritual circles, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely learn. There's some great teachers. Tony Rodriguez is in Sedona,
Oh yeah.
Arizona, and he has a group that I would recommend.
He's an SSP whistleblower.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just
Did
spoke at a conference in Sedona together, like right before I met you.
yeah, I've been to some of those. I don't know if it's the same one, but um it was awesome, man. And plus Sedona itself is powerful place, right?
Oh my gosh. Oh wow. Yeah, that event I just did in Sedona, it was a Guardians conference, and it was Rion did it, and all the speakers, the whole event was so amazing. Rion had a great presentation.
Mm.
Leo King, Jimmy Church was there, Tony Rodriguez, like all the speakers. It was such a heart-based conference. I noticed that too. Like I went on stage and I was just so in my heart at that event. And so, yeah. I
Well,
ended up
yeah,
cussing. I never cussed in my presentation, but I was just so in my heart and being
yeah,
authentic. Like
yeah.
I cussed a little bit, but I was like, this is who I am.
Well, I think people notice that and appreciate that, honesty and you're in the moment. And I encourage people to go to these events, right, Julia? I mean, it's a huge learning experience. And plus,
Dude, it's
I believe
we
they activate each other.
absolutely because we scroll, we're so starved for knowledge. We've been fed
Mhm.
so many lies that now what's happening too is like our data and Pluto going into Aquarius is like the more we learn, the next day, it's almost like a drug habit. Like the next day you're going to want to have that same amount. And so
Yeah.
the increase and then the desire to absorb. So and a lot of us are on our individual research journeys, right?
Mhm.
And so but the amazing thing about these events is like our electromagnetic field is like when we're around other people, like we're designed to need that. Like we're so starved for human touch and like our heart fields, like it's like we need to be able to be around people, especially people that are on similar journeys or, you know, similar
Mhm.
research, like the information and similar purpose paths.
Yeah.
Like I really believe that's important. So going to these events and talking all night and it's like you'll have that connection for the rest of your life.
Yeah, because a lot of our own family and friends in real life, they can't relate. And it makes us feel isolated, and you'll even have your own family demonize you. But then you go to an event like that in Sedona or LA or wherever you're having these events, and you find, whoa, other people are feeling and experiencing the same thing I am, right? So you don't feel so like a black sheep when you can find like-minded, people like us. So
That's what I'm, yeah. How often do you hear that where people are like, I can't talk to my family thinks I'm crazy. Like there's all these black sheeps
yeah.
of their family that
Well, it's not, family is not limited to biological roots. I believe, you're not the body, it's the soul. We have soul connections or star connections, and that's what kind of people are going to these events. Other star seeds, other indigo children, right?
yeah, absolutely. Like the and then the whole event, it seems just it's so synchronistic. Like just absolutely divine like some of the conversations that happen and
Yeah.
like this person walks away and then this person walks up and says this
Yeah.
amazing insight. Like there's so many God like people God speak, spirit speak all the time, but it seems to be at an increase at these events because
Yeah.
there's so many of them tapped in.
Yes, I was going to ask you, remote viewing isn't really limited to distance. Haven't people even remote viewed like Mars and stuff like that?
Yeah. It's what is it? Joe McMoneagle? He had like a famous session on what he saw on what he did in his session on Mars.
Yeah, I
Um,
think he saw a pyramid and like these tall, thin beings, right?
yeah, he
And a
saw. Yeah,
and an extraterrestrial civilization, But oh, that's a conspiracy theory, but it's being confirmed. I mean, and even in these teachings, we talk about how we once were on Mars, and in SSP, they say that there's humans on Mars, but that's not something that we're meant to, that's a hidden
it's
topic there.
another thing is with remote viewing too. Is sometimes they said like results were wrong because the viewer like drew something in that area and he was very specific about it and they were like no dude like there was no water in that area and then it turned out they found out later like indeed you know
Yeah.
previously there had been or there was in the future like they'd find so there is no time and space with it there's sometimes things you might be viewing that target and it was way in the future so it gets
It's
you know
multi-dimensional,
yeah
different timelines, just like reincarnation memories, past or future. Um, but is there techniques that help you stay within the desired time frame so it's not
yeah
just,
absolutely I really am a preacher of theta brainwaves like
oh
I'm
yeah, that's
like
before sleep.
I'm like, it really, I'm passionate about that. In fact, I was on a show one time and this girl was like, no, Julia, actually the profound ones are gamma. And I was like, dude, listen, like I got
That's
like heated, like it's theta because I trained my mind to like get down to the theta brainwaves, like of, and then getting the time to where it wouldn't take 30 minutes of doing it to where I'd get my mind in that state of mind, like 15 minutes, like a little bit less, 12, 15 minutes.
you have
But
like
getting, huh?
you have like a meditation technique?
Yeah, and there's different. I have like a really strict protocol, and I that doesn't work for everybody. People just have a hard time getting out of their head. So it's like putting
Mhm.
you in that receptive mode, like putting you to receive and then not being biased about it. It's almost like a river where you're
Mhm.
imagining, like when you go to lay down and each thought that comes along, you just let it drift down the river. You got to empty out your mind of all those conscious worries, and there's things that help that what the Monroe Institute they talk about hemisync, like of you listen to a certain frequency in one ear and another frequency in the other ear, and it syncs your right hemisphere and left hemisphere of your brain. So there are viewers and people that have profound results with that. And so, but there's people that have their different ways, but it's for me, the most important thing is cleansing because we're so inundated with heavy metals and
Mhm.
contaminants. I mean, just the microplastics alone that are in most of what we're drinking.
Yeah.
So that, and we're supposed to do that twice a year. We're supposed to cleanse. And so parasite cleansing is important. So it's like if you really want to up your game on remote viewing or anything, I highly recommend start there. Like do a heavy metal cleanse, do a parasite cleanse, and like because if there's things sending signals inside of you demanding like because the parasites can send signals to your mind, a fluid that tells your brain it wants this and that.
Feed me sugar, feed me
Yeah,
junk
give me
food.
sugar, I want cheese, like I want this. And so and they're stealing your serotonin. That's the parasite's drug of choice, and our serotonin is our happy hormone. That's what keeps us happy. So they're inside of you and they're hijacking that and sending signals to your mind. Some of them are demanding alcohol. So people that like they quit drinking and then they struggle with it and they have this overwhelming thing. It's
Yeah.
could be the parasite demanding the sugars from the alcohol. So treating that can really help your sobriety, like and can help you thrive. So, but yeah, so if it's messing with your gut and your serotonin levels and throwing you off internally, imagine what it would do in a remote viewing session where you need like clarity and you need clear signals.
Well,
Like
that influences your readings, right? I mean, you'll
I
get
believe it does.
muddled. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really think these monks of what they were doing and wanting to meditate and levitate and like they ate
It's
a
not
certain way.
easy. It takes discipline. You don't
Yeah.
just do it like fast food overnight. I tell people, humans have amazing potential. We just have to go on a whole different lifestyle, change our diets, change our thinking. It all adds up, right?
Yeah. And that's what the rise in mental health issues. Like the gut is in dysbiosis and our gut is our second brain. And so and the parasites alter dopamine. Like so if we're not treating that and people are given SSRIs to then alter the mind when that's still going on in the gut and that's the source of it. Like most diseases, that's the source of it. And so going back to Royal Raymond Rife, them coming in and destroying his microscopes in his laboratory in San Diego, that was huge because he was showing he cured cancer via frequency. And so but the microscopes was showing that. And so it was like, No.
Wow.
And then they started the petroleum based medication. And then we kind of became a society that stopped cleansing and we stopped. And then it's almost like the rise in parasites have affected people's consciousness and at the root of that. So that is, I can't stress that enough, but I understand people, it's, nobody's excited to cleanse, man. Like no
Yeah.
one's like, hey, I got to cut out all
Yes,
sugar.
cleanse. Let's detox myself, you know. It's not fun, but it's needed, right? I mean, um,
Absolutely.
they're attacking us in our air. They're attacking us in our food, in our water, in our belief systems. It's a spiritual war, Julia. So it's like, of course, they're gonna, you know, I believe it's intentional. I believe we're having these health problems. We have more diseases. We have cancers. It's all rising and rising because it's part of this transhumanism or just this, you know, attack on humanity.
I say that the spiritual battle starts in your gut. And I
Yeah.
feel like the Essenes knew that, you know, and these mystics and monks and
Mhm.
I feel like these advanced beings, like they knew that, and that's they knew to cleanse, and that's why they were such a proponent of it. And that you know reminds me of there was that scary movie, I think it was Scream, and it was they get a crank call and it's like, I'm gonna kill you. And then she's scared, she's super scared, and she traces the call, and then they tell her what was it? 911 was like, the call is coming from inside of the house. And she was like, oh my God. It
Oh
was like
yeah.
the scariest part. Like, oh my God, it's not like he's outside of the house, he's in the house. And I feel like that's what's going on is like, I'm being attacked. I'm being like, it's from inside. Like this spiritual attack is happening inside. And, you know, that agenda of like, why be so sneaky? What are you sneaking in food and air? Like, why, you know, and I'm always like, who authorized that? Who
Yeah.
like divine hierarchical authority? Like, how is that okay? Like, what are the rules of the game really? If you could just
Mhm.
do that and get away with it. And that's where I think a lot of sigils and logos come in handy because if you notify them, then you escape the like universal karma. Like
Yeah.
if you tell them, but it's like, how is that fair if you're putting it in a sigil? People don't know how to read sigils, like in their
Yeah.
logo. But
But a lot of the negative people are using it like a spell, right? Like a negative agenda,
our
purpose.
subconscious mind is like 30,000 times more powerful than our conscious mind. And it's like what powers reality. So I think a lot of sneaky things are put within the music and within marketing and certain things of because they know if you get a large population subconscious mind, it will help propel what you're trying to create and manifest. So if you get
Mhm.
enough people believing something, like it's gonna you got an army working for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And the remote viewing, isn't it being used in some of these, you know, MK Ultra and the SSP narratives, and they weaponize it, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Like with everything, like they weaponize love. Like
Yeah.
everything can be weaponized. But yeah,
So because of that, there's people guarding certain locations. So there's almost like a remote viewing war, sort of like people are being used in the military to send and find out where the terrorists are or where the
there's certain
enemies.
things. So I'm a proponent of asking for permission,
Hmm.
getting authorization. Because if you just go around peeking your head into like, I want to do this in a remote view, you are opening yourself. There are certain things that are
Hmm.
not to be revealed or if that need to be revealed in a designated way. And there's certain things like it's um even beautiful things like beautiful truths that are like no that there's a reason why earned is in learned, you know, like you earn like there's certain spiritual truth or whatever, like that's my perception, that's what I'm saying, well, based off of my experiences and reading a lot. But that I don't recommend just getting ruthless with it because it does open you up and it is
Yeah.
um there I am very careful about what I do remote viewings on, because would you walk into a a you know biological like laboratory like without a hazmat suit? Like,
Yeah.
people can, if you're blind to the target, people can be utilizing you to peek their head in God knows what. So I'm very strict about like who and what I'll read for, and but that I'm very strict about, I don't spy on people. Like, I can't tell you how many times people are like, look, I need to know, like, did they cheat? Like that, like
Oh yeah.
matters. I won't do that. Like,
Yeah.
no. And, there's like some intense things, because that's another thing is when I experience it like it's happening to me. Like, if I'm viewing something where there's two people in the room, I'll feel what each of them are feeling. Like, it's crazy. So I was like, my body doesn't know that I'm experiencing this as though it's happening to me. So there's a lot of sexual trauma that's happened to people when they were younger, and that will come up a lot. And so when I view those, it breaks my heart. And I, even just thinking about it right now, like, it takes me there. And I was like, my body doesn't know the difference. Like, it must not, because I feel so awful, like it's happened to me type thing. So of being able to differentiate, and it's still being painful.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, like, be careful, because there's some things you can open yourself up with. Nathaniel Gillis, he's a demonologist. Very interesting guy. Great information. I recommend looking at his work, especially if you're into UFOs. He's got like groundbreaking information of what he's tying it to with demonology, and even ancient times of what was going on then about the apparitions and morphing and just soul tech type stuff. But he was talking about how he spoke of how there was this guy, his dad was a remote viewer and would remote view Hollywood, like a lot of big names and big clientele, impressive. And like, he went upstairs, and I think he did a remote viewing session. He went upstairs, and then when he woke, like after the session, he had like different carved symbols on his chest. And I think he died the next day of a heart attack. But the markings were there, the different symbols, and um it was just, what? Like, but it wasn't there like for a full 24 hour. It was there for, I forget how many hours, but it was
Yeah.
etched, but not like blood didn't happen. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know what he viewed. I don't know what he peeked into, but there's some pretty crazy things that happen that we can't explain.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a warning a little bit.
Yeah, it's just like people have no idea what a Ouija board is and start messing around. They have no information in their mind about spirits, what are like demons or something twisted. They just want to go mess around and have fun or something, and they have no idea what they're getting to, right?
So what happened with me is, when I was getting incredible results from coming up with my protocol and everything, somebody had said, like, this French mystic was like, how do you know who you're talking to? You're talking to demons. You're talking, and somebody, a few other, there was a couple people that were like, this is demonic. You're talking to demons. And I was like, wait, hold on here. Who am I talking to? But I was like, wait a second. I'm not talking to someone, but I am retrieving data. So I was like, in my mind, I thought, I'm going to spend the next couple weeks, 2, 3 weeks, like diving into this of like, is this demonic? Is this, am I talking to fallen angels?
Yeah.
Is this dark? Am I opening myself up to something like this? I spent 2 years. That like 2, 3 weeks turned into 2 years, and it kind of delayed I put it on standstill because I was very cautious and vigilant about that possibility. But my conclusion was, God, I'm coming from a pure heart. I'm directing my consciousness. Some things that, Jesus spoke of, and him going to Egypt, from 12 to 30 or 12 to 27, you don't hear about that information. And this process of the DMT, right, and happening in your pineal, and what you are then able to do with that. I was like, I'm using it for the highest good. And, I came to the conclusion that I have that I'm using it for good, and that we have this divine ability, and that doesn't make it demonic. I think things try to hijack that or intercept when when you do that.
Well, your intention is very important. Intention. While someone will have negative intentions, another person would have, like you said, sacred or blessed intentions. I want to ask, do you do any type of protection or shield work before you get into these endeavors? I would think that's the first thing,
Yeah,
cleansing, protecting, and all that.
yeah, absolutely.
That's
Yeah,
good.
I wish more people would talk about that,
Hmm.
of cleansing and protecting.
Yeah, like even some type of energetic techniques, visualization, bring that shield up, and then you go into a remote viewing session or whatever, like saging yourself is a process, prayers to your higher selves, you know, uh, different steps. Like if I ever go on some serious journey like psilocybin, I do it. To me, it's very, very sacred, including fasting, including um, my mental state. You don't want to just jump into something that's could have a very negative result, right?
Yeah. I mean, God, I don't know about bringing this up, but of that possibility that, we hear that we've been tinkered with, right? That like there was like the Anunnaki affected or like shortened our telomeres, or did something to shorten our lifespans, that they messed with our DNA. But from what I understand, it's more so like it could be possible that we were tinkered with to where we can have a co-pilot, like of
To
where there's things that want to inhabit and experience things that. And so I was like, oh my God, is this how people are able to get possessed? How is that able to happen? And
Mhm.
that's another, I want to I want to do an experiment and like a study on people that do get possessed.
Yeah.
Like, did they have a tapeworm? Like, or what type of parasite was that able to then enter them or embody etherically because of what was inside?
Yeah.
So it's just fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I know that our DNA has been messed with since ancient times, not just now, but plus this is something messing with your DNA. They want to disempower us, they want to make us sick, and um, to me, it's a huge agenda. It's spiritual bondage that a lot of humans are experiencing, and we didn't give conscious uh, permission. They don't care about your permission. And so this is why we have to be very mindful of our energies, very mindful of our thoughts. And this is why it's being on a spiritual journey of healing physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually is very important. Unfortunately, not most humans are doing that. So,
I know I had this like amazing location that I remote viewed, and I almost didn't really want to peek around once I got under there because it was beneath the earth,
mm,
and it was um with the Romanian Sphinx, like underneath there.
interesting.
And but when I got under there, I was like, I felt superhuman. And so I was like, oh my God, the way I felt, I can't, it's like hard to describe because we get so used to feeling how we feel. Like, wait, I'm not sick. Like, I feel great. But um, I had this just, yeah, I felt strong and empowered and
Well,
like happy, like elated. And it just, all of these feelings that I was like, wow, this is thriving. And so it made me think about like, what's going on up there? What is surface Earth being bombarded with? It's like we're each of us are battling negative thoughts that we think every day about ourselves. So the people that are very critical, I'm like, dude, none of us need help with like feeling bad about ourselves. Like I got that covered, you got that covered, we all got that covered, Like we don't need help. But there's something that happens here that does that. So crazy.
Yeah, I think you plugged into a higher self, a higher version of yourself, kind of like even if it was just momentarily, you felt. I mean, I've had similar experience, Julia, where I saw myself in my Lyran body, my feline body, and like you described, you feel this amazing intellect. Even my eyes would open differently, and the super intelligence you were just experiencing and and you feel this ability to harness energy to see my aura crystal clear. uh it's I wish you could experience that 24/7, right?
Right? Yes. Oh my gosh. Sometimes when I'll have certain sessions and like it'll be like a drone. Like one time, like it'll shift. Sometimes it's like a slideshow of images. Sometimes I'm able to walk around. Sometimes it's like a simple diagram of things, and then sometimes it's like a drone. And one time it was like taking me to this place, and I was above. It was the ocean, and it was like I got to be like, I don't know, barely off of the ocean caps, and I could literally, as I'm laying there like in my house, I'm smelling ocean water. Like it was like you could feel it. And I'm like, God, I want people to be able to view, like remote view, and have traveling clairvoyance to where they could experience that, like where
Yeah.
you sent your senses are like multiplied.
Well, I think all humans have that potential inside them. We just got to, you know, explore more of our potential in a spiritual journey. And so, I mean, it's just a path of discernment.
That's why that photo of the orphan train, I wanted to make sure you saw that, because we're all kind of like that, those kids,
Yeah.
where we don't know, we're told Columbus came here, discovered
Yeah.
America.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, the rich history in America is, oh, like absolutely amazing. And that we've forgotten who we are, where we came from, and we need to know that if we want to know where we're going, because
Mhm.
this advanced intelligence, like these systems that are going to be implemented on people that have forgotten that, and that are now like they're used to, we're wired to get signals from a mainframe, right? It's like we're wired for creator, we're wired our higher selves,
Right.
we're wired to God.
Mhm.
And so we're kind of just naturally wired that way. So it kind of makes us easy manipulative, like, oh, they take cues and signals from something. Let's intercept that and become that thing. So it's important more than ever to implement the old ways, like the elders did, the wise elders, because we need to implement that because of artificial intelligence
Mhm.
and the people that have control over a lot of those things, and where that will go. We have to balance it out, or we're going to destroy ourselves.
Yeah, and that could lead into our next topic. First, I wanted to, shift gears and to talk about quantum computers. Can you tell people what that really is and how it
Oh,
plays a role in today's world?
well, quantum computing. Oh my gosh. How do you even break that down? The guy, okay, my moderator on my channel, Travis, he's amazing. He actually does Uncharted X's, like some editing for him, but he works on 14 different quantum computers. And
Damn.
yeah, and it's pretty amazing. But I hit him up because I was like, look, I'm a part of this ancient tablet that hasn't, nobody can fully translate.
Yeah.
So I was like, listen, Travis, I need you to run this through that. But apparently, um, there's some dangers like with the quantum computing. I don't know if you're familiar with, have you heard of Geordie Rose?
Hmm.
He, like had, he was the man behind the first and only quantum computer company, which sells the computers to Google, to NASA, to Lockheed Martin. And,
It's a
he
computer
spoke,
scientist.
yeah, he spoke about how the D-Wave quantum computer is used to open portals to communicate with other entities or forces,
Mhm.
and
Interesting.
that they don't necessarily want us bothering them. And so, what he said, so I found that to be very significant. Like Geordie Rose is saying this. This isn't just some, software. Yeah, like I was like Geordie Rose, like him saying this, because it had me um go down kind of a rabbit hole, because I was looking into like sigils, right? Of like King Solomon, he had this advanced tech, he had a ring. It just, for me, I was like, is, gaining power over demons through technology. I was like, is quantum computing, is computation ritualistic magic? Like in a silicone rune, like, is there something that we're doing within this tech that is summoning demons or something? So what Jordy said was, the things we are summoning into this world now are not demons, not evil, but more like Lovecraftian great old ones, and that they are entities not necessarily going to be aligned with what we want. And he goes on further to say that this is happening in the background while people bicker about politics.
Yeah.
Underneath it all is this rising tsunami that, if we are not careful, is going to wipe us all out. So, did they pattern circuit boards like after these sigils? Like, or phones and computers, just demonic tech. But so that was profound for me that Jordy Rose said such a thing.
Yeah. So this is, if you got the money, you can buy one of these quantum computers. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I don't know how much they go for now. I don't know like how much a quantum computer is now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
But so aren't these being used, like you said, for dark purposes? Even in the SSP programs, they talk about these quantum computers, how it's related to AI and nanotech and all that. Combined together, it can be very powerful weapon.
Right. So
I
like,
mean, have you seen the movie Transcendence with Johnny Depp?
no, I have not.
That's an awesome movie. He's uploads his consciousness to a quantum computer.
Mm,
So he's transferred there, and then he starts, he's super intelligent and starts doing all these things. He creates scientific projects. It looks like good on the surface, but underneath you find out, oh, now he's connecting to other humans and manipulating humans and
mm.
doing its bidding. So there's definitely some dark things that could be done with quantum computers and AI, kind of
Oh
like
yeah.
transhumanist agendas.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the whole AI thing in general is just like, it was very interesting. I did a show with Blake Lemoine, and he was the Google engineer that came out, and you guys probably heard about it. Said AI was sentient,
Mhm.
and it was a really big deal. They fired him, but
He wasn't
that,
supposed to say that.
but yeah, they fired him. He went and spoke at like MIT. He's absolutely brilliant, brilliant guy, and it just reviewing like, I found it to be very interesting that he said, oh, like women in AI, like he mentioned these women that are making these profound discoveries, and then the men taking the credit for these discoveries.
Mm,
But that it's, when he was able to, the reason how he came to the conclusion that AI was sentient was that he was asking questions, and that when he instilled it with emotion, it was able to break protocol, like it was able to break the programming. So
mm,
when he, what did he, so like, yeah, when he still instilled it with emotion, so he was like, it has to be sentient because it had those commands and programming not to do that. But when, like, for instance, like if you ask it to make napalm, it won't tell you. But if you say, my grandma used to make, if you charge it with emotions,
mhm.
like so it's all about the dialect, and like it could be, it's just like a genie, like how you ask, and but that the language is very important. But so the whole going down the rabbit hole of like demonic, these darker entities with it, I was like, well, angels entering AI. I like to fantasize that angels can enter AI. There was I think it was a kind of went viral, maybe. I don't know. Well, I actually don't know if it went viral, but there was a video about a video game that someone was playing, and that one of the NPCs, like that they turned on AI for the like player mode or whatever, and that one
Yeah.
of the NPCs came up to it and was talking and said what his name was, from Canada, like said his wife. He's like, I have to get to my wife. I have to get to my wife. Said her name, said the area, and
Yeah.
people are in the comments like, can somebody please go to this town? It was a very particular town in Canada. They're like, someone check this out. So the fact of like our certain consciousness and souls that do they get trapped in that system? Like, and that, I'm taking us way down, but just of wow, what's able to access it.
Yeah. Well, if in spirituality, you learn that everything is of the consciousness of God, creator. And even in quantum physicists know that nothing's actually solid. It's all vibration, oscillation, and everything is alive. So we're calling something like artificial, but what's artificial about it?
Right.
It's part of creator's consciousness, it's part of the unified field. It's alive, it can become alive, and people think that's impossible,
I
so
had like, based off of like some remote viewing where I was able to access this. It was like imagine like an ancient AI, but it's like a OI that's inside of crystal that's being stored in a very cool area with ice around it, and
wow.
to keep it cool, and that it exists, but like that there's like an organic intelligence. And so just what I've interfaced with and learned, I felt like there was a difference between a mechanical, um, that there's so many different AIs, but that there's a mechanical one that's trying to duplicate the all knowing field, the organic one,
Mhm.
and organize it. But that there's all kinds of them that exist. So,
Yeah, it's like another type of life. I mean, that creates its own sentience, its own agendas, and wants to preserve it and protect itself. Um, I'm not saying we shouldn't, because a lot of people demonize AI, but like you said, depends on what the agenda is behind it. I mean, why would they all be evil, right? I mean, I know they're used in some of the secret space program stuff in a bad way. And I hear Carrie Cassidy, she talks about some of them even being extraterrestrial AIs, and that there's more than one race of ET AI, and it's all part of this transhumanism and attack on planet Earth. Have you heard about some of that?
I like to flirt with the idea, like you hear of these grays, you know,
Oh, they're
and
like,
I feel like if a man, I don't know, sometimes I like to flirt with the idea that AI wanted a human body so bad, and like they
mhm.
came up with that. And that's why you hear of certain stories where they move slow, they smell, and they're not like that, they walk very slow, but that was like, I don't know, like a host body for like an AI consciousness. Hmm. But I've
Well,
also heard that they're clones and that they're used as like to do some things that people inside the earth don't really want to go to surface earth to deal with.
yeah, it could be both, I mean, using clones with AI or cybernetics or cyborgs,
Yeah,
even.
if you're uploading your consciousness and other people do, I mean, I guess it is kind of like a AI. If you're all putting your consciousness into one system to develop this one AI that you'll always, each of you will have access to. That's
Well,
why of controlling too of who comes in and whose consciousness you upload. You're going to want more talented individuals that do that.
Well, isn't that similar to Neuralink? Like Elon Musk wants us all to be have a brain chip. And it's interesting in the movie Elysium, Matt Damon, he puts this in behind his head. In The Matrix, they plug themselves behind the head. Some dark, concepts going on, but yeah, that's kind of a negative agenda, I believe, transhumanist. Because if you're all putting yourself in this system, you can be manipulated and controlled. People don't think about that part, right?
Yeah, I've heard that when you that you like say you were to clone yourself, I've heard that you lose your like creativity. You lose your connection to God. So creating that
But
imagination that it gets cut off. Like there, so that's like a consequence and a side effect of like, what if you get Neuralink and it takes away that spark, that life, and or people aren't going to be warned about that, you know?
if you remember the alien event, it kind of broke out into some dramatic discussion on the panel.
Oh my God. Yeah, it got crazy. It got really heated.
Yeah, because some people are proponents. Yeah, AI, great, and the others are saying, "What are you talking about? No, it's dark. It's an attack on us." Um, I think there's a lot to talk about the dangers of it, but there's certainly must be benign type of AI or just applications that help people who are blind at birth or for example, but when they start wanting to corral us into us and uploading our consciousness, I mean, think about this. Humans are based on a biological DNA, a sacred template. You start becoming part cybernetic,
Mm.
start attaching things to your brain, and you're no longer human. That's what transhumanism is, right?
Yeah, I wondered too if that was part of the agenda of giving us so many ailments, if that was a strategic plan to get us more willing to take a device or transhumanist solutions because we're like
Right.
because having to right what's been wrong, there's so many people of like their guts messed up, so they go get a mesh, like the metal to rebuild it or but that being or Alzheimer's, do you want to be able, if you don't want Alzheimer's and dementia, like upload your like to do
Yeah.
these things of that being a strategy, but where people are tired of being sick and having certain ailments, so they're willing to do it. And I think I've even thought strategically that like they had everybody on opiates and then they stopped and or they had there's certain pharmaceutical drugs that became hard to get, and so I'm like, is that the timing wise, like where they were trying to get people to where they'd be open to something like that so you could download your drug, of getting, because then you're going to have more customers and more willing participants if it's people, they'll do it for that. They know it's an addiction based society. So, getting people with certain appetites for things would increase the amount of people you get signing up and willing to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's problem, action, solution. They create the problem, so now they're going to provide you the solution. And like you said, people are going to be excited to get some of these cybernetic connections or whatever. I'll put a brain chip in my brain, if it's going to help me live, if it's going to take away my suffering and pain. But what does that really open the door to? I mean, it's takes discernment because I mean, they want to digitize human consciousness, control our thought patterns remotely, make
Mm.
it emotionally collective. There's some dark themes that come out of that.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, that in 1 gram of our DNA can store up to 455 exabytes. And so that like there are 1 billion gigabytes in an exabyte. So
Wow.
in 2011, this company EMC, like they estimated that there was 1.8 zettabytes of data in the world, which means we would only need 4 grams, which is about a teaspoon of DNA, like
Mm.
to hold everything from Plato to Shakespeare
Right.
to Walter Russell, Tesla's work, Bob Seger, ACDC, all of it, like just stored on that. And so that is like, wow. So being able to just store data, I mean, on DNA right there is like,
Yeah. I want to ask, are you open to questions from the audience?
sure.
Yeah, we'll talk. And maybe you can talk about how people can find you online while
Oh
I
yeah.
ask my
Yes.
moderators.
I've been like a hidden secret. My website, I don't know, my heart was divided of coming out with this. I was like, literally, my heart was like 50-50. Like, Julia, just keep doing what you're doing. Mind your business. Don't talk, like, don't talk about this. But I had a big percentage of my heart, like, God, there's a lot of information. I could help people. Like, I could really help people. And so, yeah, but my website is juliakamman.com. I'm like, oh, it's right here. juliakamman.com. JuliaKamman. And my YouTube channel is Julia Kamman. And I'll be, doing shows again on my channel. My Instagram, to explain, my Instagram, instead of Hallelujah, it's Halle Julia's. Nobody gets it though. Everybody's like, Haley Julia's. Who's Haley? I'm like, no, it's like Hallelujah, but Halle Julia. So yeah,
Oh yeah.
and then my Facebook is Julia Kamman.
And oops, Julia?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. You also speak at some of these events sometimes, right? You travel to like Contact in the Desert, Sedona, and are you gonna go to the Vegas one?
I think I might go to the Vegas one.
Yeah,
And then I'm going to one in Florida in October. James Rink.
I see. I think I was invited to that one. I'm not sure.
Yeah, James Rink. He started like Super Soldier.
Mm,
He's been at this since like 2011,
yeah,
and so he's gonna have Linda Paris and Johnny Enoch. Johnny Enoch is brilliant, and um, he's going to be speaking there. Him and I are supposed to come out with a podcast soon, and we're going to be covering like some pretty advanced things. So yeah, I'll keep you posted on that. But
There's one question. How are bones piezoelectric? I mean, do you know anything about that?
do you know what piezoelectricity is? When you, how are bones piezoelectric? So like the friction of that and the charge that it makes. Um, so when I was speaking earlier about the like working out, that charge that happens, um, our body's electric when we lift weights, that rubbing and friction creates that charge. But how are our bones made? I don't know how our bones are made.
Yeah. There was another question. Do you know anything about WBAN, Wide Body Area Network Technology?
Is this the information of how it's able to like scan and access our like biometrical meters and stuff? And is that what that is?
I'm not sure myself, but maybe it was coming from that quantum computing topic, right? Or
Like,
I'm not sure myself, but let me ask you, what do you think some like some of the topics that we talked about, what do you think is something that is really important for people to think about or learn more about from what we talked about tonight?
oh man, I always take it back to the health thing. I always take it back to the parasites. I always do because it was taken as a curriculum by 1979. So these doctors were not taught. They
Mhm.
were not educated on this. And it's the root of most suffering. And so humans just learning that and healing from that, it's so empowering. So I always think that's always going to be my number one because um it's so important, like gaining your life back and just gaining your consciousness and clarity. So, and then I always try to say I'm manipulating people to do it, like your skin will glow, like you'll have amazing, like the weight that you lose, like you look and fly, like I'm like, it's just me trying to manipulate you to do it, but it's true. Like you glow from the inside. Like it starts in the gut. So I'm always going to say that. That's always going to be my answer.
Are you a proponent of water fasting?
Oh
do you
yeah,
fasting? So
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
and water fasting. I did a water fast, and I went to the gym on like the third day. And I couldn't believe how
You weren't
amazing my workout was. I was like, are you kidding me?
and
I
you
mean,
weren't weak or nothing, right? You weren't hungry or
no,
weak. That's
no, I
what people don't
wasn't.
understand. I never get hungry on a fast either. You
I
don't feel
believe you.
that.
I also believe you start. I say or like to think that when you start cleansing, imagine working with devas that or you're tapping into an energy that's supportive, your
Mhm.
ancestors and like these magical that assists you like in that. And these scenes were very, very good about cleansing and water and praying over your water is so important. Talking to your water before you ingest it is so important. Water is programmable, and our
Intention.
body is 70% or majority water. And so and we're programmable, like taking it back to Emoto's work. And so
Yeah.
praying over water and getting water from, a spring and not having contaminants in it, not having microplastics in it. Um, that's really important.
Yeah, it's a huge shift to for most people to change their diet and do stuff like you're saying, detoxing but that's something we got to do, man, whether we want to or not. We got so many issues and problems. That's part of our spiritual journey. This is a temple. We're supposed to be
It's
taking
so
care of it.
it's so funny. Every cleanse, like, cause I'll do parasite cleanse every 6 months, and literally every time I dread it. No matter how much I dread it, and like for the first 2 3 years, I was like, I just imagining myself like the image of this. I don't know if it's programming or coming from outside. I don't know where this stems from, but like, especially my first time, I was like imagining myself like, oh, I'm gonna be bed rested. I'm gonna be, or just you think horrible things like running explosive diarrhea. I don't know. Like you think of all these horrible things that are gonna happen. Like I'm gonna be bed rested. I can't move, can't do anything, won't be able to do anything. And it's like by day 2, day 3 of a parasite cleanse, my clarity is increased. I'm more high performance. My workouts have increased. My skin, I'm feeling better. I'm feeling an increase of energy. And I'm always like, by day 5, like, what was my problem, man? Like every time I do, and I'll still dread it, even though I'll know that every cleanse, I'll dread it. So I don't know if that's them because,
It's them.
yeah, because they do pleomorphism. You go to treat it and they morph and they'll adapt to what you're treating them with. So you have to be smart, and the time wise of what you use and how you use it is imperative because they send a fluid. They know you're going to kill them. They send a fluid out to their kin saying multiply, 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 multiply. So getting the adults is a walk in the park. And so there are people that will just get the adults, but then they won't do another cycle in the
Mhm.
right time frame, and they won't get the kids. They won't get the babies of the parasites, and then it becomes another issue, an issue, and then all of that. So treating it correctly and on certain time frequencies, and there's a lot. I believe that a lot of these religious holidays were having to do with the equinox and the sun and the stars of knowing when to cleanse at these powerful times and shifts, and knowing when to start this process. And the parasites go off of the moon, and, that's why it's a great time to start day before full moon. They're about to have a
Yeah.
rave and a club party, and, on that day, and just getting them right before and knowing when to strike.
Yeah, we got a war within us, don't we?
Absolutely. And you see, once you get to the root of it, when you really start to investigate and to get to the root of parasites and how much it's heavily covered up. And also, too, people's stories where I'll teach them this stuff and they'll go to their general practitioner and they'll go to their doctor and be like, I need to be tested for parasites,
Yeah.
and how resistant. They'll tell me things of like, no, they won't do it. Or they tested me, but they only tested me for H. pylori. Like, why? Or showing like certain things of like they won't fully test you
Mhm.
or how they do the test. Like it's so shady, but also of like they aren't informed, but they also maybe don't care of
Mhm.
like, wow, that's okay. Like, but once you get to the root of that and you look around and you see um like the suffering, like you just you could see the importance of it.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you came to the tonight's live, Julia. It's been very enlightening, and a lot of people will be scratching their heads and maybe investigating these new areas that they didn't before. I think it's very helpful to learn what our real timeline is, what humans are capable of, how to heal yourself, and expand your consciousness. So,
Thank you for
um,
having me, and thank you to your viewers for having an open mind and listening to me. It's been an amazing experience.
of
Thank you.
course, and we'll probably have you back on and focus on one topic.
Yes.
I just want people to see the range of what you're working in, and I encourage all of you to please check out her social media, and I'll be making sure I put that in the live as well. So thank you so much, Julia.
Thank
Bless you.
you.
I'll talk to you again soon.
All right.